3, 2, 1.
All right. Good morning. We're convening a Board of Health meeting, Thurston County Board of Health, for April 30th, 2020. It's about 10:05 a.m. I'm going to just tick through who I see on this call so we know. We've got the Vice Chair of the Board of Health, Commissioner Hutchings. We've got Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Elizabeth Petrich. I believe Jane Futterman as well from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Art Starry from Public Health Social Services. Our Director of Public Health and Social Services, Shelley Slaughter. Lydia Hodgkinson, Clerk of the Board of Health. Vicki Larkin from the Public Health and Social Services. Thomasina Cooper from Commissioner's Office. And Ramiro Chavez, County Manager. And I imagine Commissioner Edwards will be joining us.
Yep.
Imminently. Okay. For the public that would like to attend via conference call, the number is 360-252-9020, and the code is 1234. 360-252-9020. Okay, so we're calling this to order. We have an agenda for this special meeting. Any comments or questions about the agenda? Commissioner Hutchings, you are muted. All right.
I have no questions. No. You let me know when you're ready for a motion.
Ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda for the Board of Health for April 30, 2020.
Second. Been moved and seconded, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. The agenda is approved. Department item is the second item on the agenda. It's regarding an item we discussed Tuesday, I believe. It's a follow-up regarding an emergency ordinance suspending, waiving, and amending certain provisions of the sanitary code for Thurston County due to the COVID-19 outbreak. I'm going to let Art Starry, Environmental Health Division Director, kind of outline this issue.
Good morning. This is Art Starry. I'm the Environmental Health Director for Thurston County Public Health and Social Services, and I've been working with our staff and with Jane Futterman to prepare the ordinance that's before you. And I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. I could review the highlights or simply identify the changes that have been made since we reviewed it on Tuesday.
Yeah, we went through each highlight on Tuesday, so let's just focus in on what is different and just give an opportunity for any questions by the board members that may have arisen since Tuesday.
Okay. So it is essentially the same ordinance as before. The one change is to Section 6. There was some discussion about that where we had a date that as far as the types of permits or the period for which permits would be automatically extended. And you, Commissioner Menser, noticed that discrepancy, and we fixed that. And so what we've done now is change Section 6, which talks about the expiration dates for certain types of on-site sewage system permits, so that any permit that expires between March 12th, 2020 and September 30th, 2020 would be extended for 1 year. And so that's consistent with the rest of the ordinance and provides additional relief to the folks who fit into that category. So that's really the only change. Everything else is the same.
Okay, well, Section 6 talks about just extending them through the end of September 2020 versus 1 year.
Yeah, sorry, for 2020. Sorry, I was looking at another section, but you've caught me on that.
Okay. All right, just making sure we got it. Any questions for Art regarding the ordinance, the changes, etc.?
No.
Commissioner Edwards.
I guess the only thing that I would mention, and maybe Art could verify that, it seems to me that today, everything that we're doing today is meant to make life easier for citizens that deal with government. So if there's an expiration coming up on a septic permit or something like that, that is extended. There are no additional fees, no additional taxes being added. We're doing this strictly to make life a little easier as we negotiate through this new reality. Is that right, Art?
Oh, that's entirely correct. And if anything, it should result in some cost savings for folks because they won't have to, get things, pay professional contractors perhaps as early as they would. So this was based on what we understand for the COVID stuff and our experience in working with the public. This ordinance, again, is intended to provide the relief and certainly not put any additional barriers or encumbrances on the public.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Okay, so it looks like we've covered the questions that might have arisen. Are we ready to take action on this item?
I am.
entertain a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt emergency ordinance H-4-2020, suspending, waiving, and amending certain provisions of Articles 1, 2, 4, and 7 of the Sanitary Code for Thurston County, extending the expiration or providing for automatic renewal of certain permits and approvals, and modifying hearing procedures as a result of the emergency due to the COVID-19 outbreak.
Is there a second?
Yes, there is a second. Yes, sir.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this item?
No.
Yes, I just want to clarify, is this as listed in the ordinance that's laid out that the public is now going to be able to review? So that's what we're modifying, is that right?
Sorry, sorry, can you repeat that again?
Well, the public isn't privy to these changes and things, but they're going to be now. I mean, it's all going to be listed. Everything we're doing is listed in this new ordinance, right?
Right,
Yeah,
it's
that's all.
very prescriptive.
Yep.
As to the changes and is underlined in each
Yeah.
of the sections, the proposed changes to the ordinance.
As per listed in our documentation.
Right, and just Commissioner Edwards, just to let you know, we actually have posted this online since it was first drafted, or at least the final draft, and so the public it has been made available to folks. And as soon as you take action, I'll make sure that all of our staff are aware of it, and we make copies available at the counter and things.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Board? Okay. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. And that's the last item on today's agenda. So I will adjourn today's Board of Health special meeting for April 30th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Public health folks.
And now we're moving into the Commissioner's check-in for April 30, 2020. And the first thing on the agenda is the Governor's authority, the stay-at-home order.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners, if I may. A couple of weeks ago, I got a request by Commissioner Edwards to look into some of the overall parameters as to what the governor's authority are related to him implementing the stay-at-home order. Since the governor has addressed that issue in one of his news conferences, I believe last week, where he specifically addressed some of those concerns that it was not necessarily related in Thurston County, but it was across the state. The some counties had some of that also perspective. So I engaged Elizabeth on this, and she has prepared a summary for you, just to give you, a perspective. This is not necessarily a legal opinion. This is just a perspective from Elizabeth as to relate to the governor's authority. And attached to that, I will ask Elizabeth to walk you through that. Is some information related to the statutes that she's listed, as well as a copy of litigation against Governor Inslee that has been filed in federal court. And also it is a copy of a news release of Franklin County Commissioners, because the Franklin County Commissioners took an action 2 weeks ago, but since that action has been rescinded, I believe, by Franklin County. And also after that conversation, You also receive two requests for you to consider. One is from, I believe, Representative, I can't remember, sorry.
Chris Gilden.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
And it's a letter that he asked the board to consider. We'll get to that point as well. And also there is an additional letter request from a council member from Clark County. They also asked for your consideration to take a position on that as well. We'll walk you through the two letters when we get to that point. But anyways, that's the frame of this conversation. And at this point, I will probably let Elizabeth to walk us through her perspective. And I believe John Tunheim was going to be able to join us, Elizabeth.
Okay, are you ready for me?
Yeah, is John Tunheim going to join us? Do you know?
I did invite him, and I said it would start at 10:15. I'm not sure if he got caught up in something
Okay,
else.
hopefully he can join us soon.
Okay, so the summary I provided you is quite straightforward and very big picture. But the nuance I just want to point out to you, because this is where I see that people get confused, is that the governor is exercising his emergency powers under two sections of 4306.220. Subparagraph 1 is he has very broad authority that is not limited, is only limited for the duration of the emergency that is in place. And that is basically to protect actions to protect public health and public safety. The second section of that statute that he can also take action on is to actually waive and suspend specific statutory provisions. We experienced that directly when he modified the Open Public Meetings Act, which said that we couldn't have people meetings in public with people attending. We had to have meetings remotely. That particular action of the legislature had to be extended beyond 30 days by legislative action, which it was extended to May 4th. So when the governor takes action amending statutes, he does need legislative approval. However, when he's taking actions for public health, which is basically, prescribing certain activities, he does not require legislative approval to extend the duration of his proclamation beyond 30 days. The only time limit is restricted to the length of the emergency in place. So that's the big picture. We all know he's taken several actions. He will continue to take. I understand he will not be extending the OPMA restrictions beyond May 4th. I haven't seen that in writing. I've just seen that in a WAPA listserv. So that's something that we could be watching for. But in terms of his stay home, stay healthy order, as you heard Romero say, there is an example where other Franklin County in particular didn't agree with that, took action to open up businesses in Franklin County. The governor came back very forcefully with the attorney general, and the Franklin County commissioners reconsidered and rescinded their action. So there is also one other thing that is in play. There has been a lawsuit filed against Governor Inslee's Stay Home, Stay Healthy order. That's in federal district court, Western District Court. And the basic allegation in that particular lawsuit is really honing in on right to religious freedom, because the governor's order limits crowd sizes. You can't have a crowd, you can't meet in a crowd. So they're saying, I can't even have a one-on-one with my minister. You're violating my right to religious freedom. That's the central tenet of the lawsuit that's currently filed against Governor. That case has not been heard. Until that case is heard, the position I think most people are taking is that his order is lawful until the court says otherwise. Another example, not here in Washington, but in Pennsylvania, there was another challenge to the governor's order, I think, restricting businesses from opening up. And in that particular case, the court upheld the governor's order. So there are being challenges to these stay-at-home orders. The current status of Washington's stay-at-home order is there has been a lawsuit filed, but it has not been heard. And the governor is continuing to move forward as it is fully, as he believes that it is fully lawful to continue to exercise his powers, given the emergency that we're experiencing right now. So that's a big picture perspective. I'm happy to answer any particular questions.
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Menzer.
What does it mean about he won't extend the OPMA stuff? What's that going to mean for us?
So because this is a statutory suspension that he put in place, and it expired mid-April, and because it's statutory, he has to have legislative approval to have that OPMA restrictions extended. Now, if the legislature grants another extension beyond May 4th, then it could come into play. But the governor cannot act unless the legislature puts in another letter saying we agree to extend the OPMA restrictions past May 4th. So we don't know if the legislature is going to do that or not. And if the legislature doesn't, what it means is we can have meetings. Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Theoretically.
it cuts both ways.
Right.
Right.
How's that going to impact how we do business?
So let me get back to you on that. I haven't seen anything in writing from the governor. It was just a listserv from WAPA that indicated that the governor couldn't take any further action beyond May 4th unless we see something from the legislature. And Romero gets those letters right away as they come out. So we'll keep you updated. So it's possible that we will not have those restrictions in place, and we'll have to come back and figure out how we want to move forward in terms of having the public attend or not.
If we're still on lockdown, or stay at home, stay healthy, yeah. That's what I was wondering, how it would affect us incrementally during our normal course of business.
Yeah. So I'd like to come back to you on that when I have more specific facts, because it's complicated.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Edwards?
Well, Commissioner Menzer's question took care of most of mine. I guess my concern is now, you said without legislative action. Does that legislative action, is it similar the way the 30-day rule was extended by the legislature? And that was leadership from the House and leadership from the Senate, both signed off on a letter, and then that gave the governor authority. Could he do the same thing on the open public meetings issue?
The legislature could, yes.
Yes. But could that be handled the same way by the legislature, by leadership, not necessarily calling everybody in?
Yes, that is correct. That's embedded in the statute. If the legislature is not in session, the leadership has the authority.
Are we then in a position that we could send the governor a letter if he hasn't put word out yet? Because that's gonna really put a crimp on our ability to do business if we're going to be A, within the governor's guidelines, or B, within the open public meetings guidelines. So the two don't seem to fit. So would a letter to the governor make sense? And I'm asking, I guess that goes to my seatmates if you say it's necessary.
I think WAPA is in the process of approaching the governor. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
I'm not sure if they are. I think the letter would need to, if you want to extend the OPMA restrictions in place, the letter would want to go, you'd want to send that to the legislative leadership. They're the ones that have the authority, not the governor.
And
Well,
I'm
I'm
not
sure
aware
he
if
must ask
Wasack is
for
doing
it.
that.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not aware if Wasack is sending a letter. I haven't heard that yet. But it might not be a bad idea to have one in place just in case, because we're going to find out more tomorrow. That gives him today to work on that if he's working on that.
I think this probably depending on how the governor is gonna be outlined the next steps tomorrow. I think the legislature perhaps is gonna be aligned to that. So I tend to believe that those conversations are occurring in the background.
I'd be surprised if they were not. Yeah, very surprised. Okay. Any other questions on the governor's emergency powers? Elizabeth, you did a good job putting this together. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we'll put that one down and move on to the commissioners, internal boards, economic task force. Well, this is where you want to talk about those letters, Romero?
Yes, this is
Okay.
I was hoping that we'll address those two letters under the same, because it's related to the same issue.
Yeah. And so I received a letter from Representative Chris Gilligan of the 25th District, which is Pierce and Puyallup area. And it is in response to the governor's wanting to re-engage the economy and re-engage business and the government back with the people in an orderly fashion and incrementally, but it's almost as it's being painted in this letter, it's like a one size fits all, and that's not a negative. But Representative Gilligan is suggesting in this letter a third option, and I hope you have the letters in front of you. He's requesting or suggesting a third option, and that is let us decentralize the state government and in this arena and let each county dictate how they will open up business again and get back to business as unusual. And because some counties are obviously severely impacted, while others are not impacted hardly in any way, shape, or form. And so it gives the counties autonomy, and that's the third option that he is suggesting in this letter. In our discussion, you also have a news article that I printed off for you because Como did a piece, an interview with Representative Gilligan 2 days ago, and it was about a 3-minute gig. The video's online, and it was a positively done interview, and even to the point where Department of Health Dr. Weisman is suggesting that he would look into this because he says, well, it probably, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but he was not opposed to it. And now we hear the governor, and yesterday, I heard in the press conference, one of my takeaways is that he is open to looking at a third option as well. So this letter, Representative Gilligan wanted to know if we as a board wanted to sign off on this letter, or if we wanted to sign off individually and send him an email saying we would add our individual names to this letter. So subsequent to that, I received a letter, an email and a letter from Council Member Temple Lentz from Clark County. And his letter, I believe you have a copy of that as well.
Yes, it is.
And it is, thank you, Governor. We support what you're doing because your decisions are based on science and fact. I'm just synopsizing it because I don't have that letter in front of me. But he was asking the same thing, if we would sign off on that letter as a board to say thank you to the governor that we're supportive of what he's doing, and or sign on as individuals. But both of these gentlemen or electeds wanted to know ASAP so they can get their letter out. So Representative Gilligan would like to know today, and Council Member Lentz wanted to know by noon today. And these just came up yesterday and the day before. And so now it's open for discussion. And not knowing which way the governor is going to take tomorrow, that may make these moot, or they may not. Lentz's perhaps not, because it's just showing support for the governor. But Representative Gilligan's it may. depending on what the governor's tact is or approach. My chat with Representative Gilligan yesterday was about 30 to 40 minutes or so, and I asked certain questions that he said would need to be addressed individually by county, and by that I mean one of the questions I asked was much like if people in Vancouver run down to Portland to buy something because they avoid sales tax. If Thurston County's closed and Lewis County's open, people are going to rush to Lewis County, and their economy might start to blossom and such. But they're going to hire more employees, and that'll impact our job force, our labor force in Thurston County, for whatever such time we start engaging. And if people are coming back from Lewis County, and this is all just supposing. I don't want anybody to print this that I said this or know this. I don't. But if people are going to Lewis County and they're becoming infected and they come back to Thurston County, it shows the person infected shows the place of residence. That would show a spike in Thurston County, further keeping us on lockdown, perhaps, when in fact that's not the case if they're getting it from Lewis County. And another question that I posed was, if we do have a spike, number one, it's going to force other counties, well, let's relax our rules and open up, because we're competing now with other counties around us that are back in business again, and we're not, and our businesses need to get up and functioning. But if we ended up with another spike, then who is to take control of that? If we're opened up and we have a spike, is it the governor then, or the county commissioners that shut us down again? Where's the authority lie? And some of those questions he didn't have answers to, but they're all good. I mean, they're good questions for discussion and debate. We'll have to see what the governor says tomorrow, but you have the letter in front of you, should you want to sign on as a board or sign on individually. And my conversation with Temple Lentz was just more based in email, not a phone conversation, but it's just a letter of support of the governor saying, thank you, thank you. So go ahead, questions or comments, commissioners? Gary?
I guess I do feel that treating the state of Washington as King County is a mistake. So the east side and the west side is completely different on how we're doing business and how we should do business. I would like to see the individual county commissioners have the authority, and I don't know if I'm saying override the governor. I don't think that's what we're talking about, but use our individual circumstance in considering what we are doing, because even Thurston County is so much different than King County, for an example. And I think we need a balance here when we think about getting our economy going, but not only just getting our economy going, but looking at the reality of what does the real flu, the regular flu, I guess, how does that impact us versus this COVID flu business that we're talking about? We've had one death, 105 people now, or something like that, that have been affected by this virus. And it's my understanding that there's 3 or less people in our local hospitals, and we're killing the hospitals. They can't do elective surgery because it doesn't go good in King County. So those are the kind of things that I'm concerned about moving forward, and I don't know what the governor is going to say tomorrow, and maybe Elizabeth has an insight. She seems to have an insight on some of the stuff going on there from her profession. But I really do think we don't have enough facts, first of all. What's the difference here on our illness in our community on the COVID virus versus the regular flu season virus? I know we have several deaths every year over the regular flu. So I am looking to get us up and operating. I'm not advocating for thousands of people at a concert in close proximity, or even ball games at the school basketball gym. But I think there are so many things that we could address that make sense. I was glad to see the governor get things changed so that our business community could start getting back to work. But I never did understand why a citizen could not go fishing in a lake, but he could go stand in a line at the food store and buy a fish. So none of that made sense, so I think we need balance, and I'd like to support the whole option of allowing county commissioners to have some say, but I need some guidance, I guess, from Elizabeth, because if we don't have the authority, we don't have the authority, and it looks like Franklin County figured that out at some point when they moved forward and then decided they had to retract that action.
Well, Representative Gilligan's letter, I think it alluded, as I recall, to in the very beginning of this, the coronavirus pandemic, that a one-size-fits-all made sense. Shut everything down, lock down, stay in place, shelter in place and such. But he says for re-engaging now and restarting the economy and government and such, this a one-size-fits-all doesn't fit. It's not applicable. And yesterday I was on a fireside chat with the VSB, Visitor Convention Bureau, and Lacey, and it was very interesting. And when you talk about organizations that want to re-engage and get things started up and fired up again, especially with the hoteliers closing down and perhaps going out of business, the VCB, Shauna was saying they've had the attitude wait, ready, set, go. And we're not at the go yet, and we're not at the set, but we're still in the waiting period. And while we're waiting, we're getting ready for the set and go, but not to jump too soon. They're just being very conscious as well, because the Great Wolf Lodge, the casinos, the hotels, it's going to be a while before those places are able to fire back up again. And so we're still in the waiting game before they do ready, set, go. And so that's the thrust of Gildan's letter is don't do a one size fits all. Let individual counties do it. And I don't know what the Franklin issue, how that impacts this at all. Commissioner Menzer, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that a coordinated approach is needed in this crisis. I think the state has the ability to take account of regional differences if the public information supports that type of a difference. It doesn't have to be one size fits all just because the state is making the call. And I'm not comfortable with a county by county approach. I mean, think about the lack of foundational public health resources we have in Thurston County, and the smaller counties, I'm sure, have even less public health expertise and professionals and information. So I just don't think that, I mean, the president's getting beat up for a state by state approach, and the idea that we would take this down at a county by county level in Washington, I don't think is good policy.
And I would just add that, without taking a stand on this just yet, that the governor is not operating within a bubble. He's got medical experts, health experts, all type of economic experts, and he also has input. He's getting input from WASAC, WASOLFO, WAPA. I mean, all the lobby organizations across the state. The governor has a tremendous amount of staff working on this and providing him information. And he does recognize, per his statement yesterday, that this is vastly different from county to county. And I think he's looking at a county by county approach. I don't know how decentralized, to use Representative Gildan's word, I don't know how decentralized he's willing to go or looking at. I won't know perhaps even till tomorrow if he spells it out. But he's not making these decisions in a bubble. And it's not beyond him that each county is different. But I am not comfortable as a county commissioner taking the responsibility for such a major action, especially not knowing what the consequences are, and then who fires the trigger, pulls the trigger again if there's a big spike. Whether the state steps in and we back down, or whether I don't know. I don't know what the legal authority is for that as well. It just brings up some interesting challenges. So I'm not opposed to Representative Gildan's letter. I'm just not sure it's needed at this point if the governor's leaning that way.
Yeah, Commissioners, I did share this letter with Elizabeth to you a couple days ago. I don't know if she has additional perspective. But also, Shelley's online, if you'd like to give her a little perspective, because she had a conversation with the health officers yesterday, last night, as a regular conference call. She may probably shed a light as to what perhaps the governor may be thinking.
That'd be helpful. Go ahead, Shelley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I had the pleasure to be on a late night phone call last night with Secretary Wiesman and Dr. Kathy Lofi, our state health officer, who directly advised the governor. And the purpose of the call was to get input from local health jurisdictions on some of the next steps. I do believe that the governor will be laying out a phased approach plan tomorrow regarding lifting of certain restrictions of the stay home, stay healthy order. There was a discussion about some counties who have had 0 cases for more than 3 weeks or never any cases, possibly having some very restrictive options to go by a county approach. But Thurston would not be in the position to qualify for that. But it could impact us, as Commissioner Hutchings, you stated, if perhaps a neighboring county had different restrictions than we did, such as Mason County, which has had only 1 case associated with the prison. So that remains to be seen what the final recommendations are tomorrow, but there was that discussion that did occur. And outside of the governor's order, if perhaps there was a change in restrictions from the governor, the health officer and the Board of Health would be the governing authority that could impose additional restrictions, as the health officer and the Board of Health did earlier on when you restricted meeting sizes in Thurston County.
Any questions of Shelley? Nope. Okay.
You know, I would like to know if Shelley knows, do we have a comparison of the regular flu season versus this virus we're dealing with today?
Yes, Commissioner Edwards, I believe you asked me that on Tuesday, and I asked staff to get that data, and I'll be providing that to you on next Tuesday. If I have it sooner, I will give it to you sooner, but I don't have the comparison directly in front of me right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth, would you like to provide a perspective on that letter?
I don't really have anything to add to that. I think it's ultimately up to the governor, and what Representative Gilligan is doing, he's asking the governor to delegate his authority to the counties.
All right.
So he's not assuming that we have authority just to start taking our own actions. We still ultimately have to wait for the governor's authority. From Representative Gilligan's perspective, he recognized that's what he's doing. He's asking the governor to delegate the authority to the counties. So that's one perspective I could share. And I think that makes sense because the authority begins with the governor. There's a question whether he can delegate that authority. I think he could if he was very clear with his guidelines and boundaries of what that delegation looked like.
So Elizabeth, what Franklin County did, they just assumed the responsibility, delegated it to themselves, and then they backed off. And why did they back off? Was that a result of a lawsuit, or was that just a conversation and they backed off?
Well, I don't know specifically. My understanding is is that they had some discussions with their prosecutor, who did not believe they had authority to do that. I know Governor Inslee came out in a press release speaking very strongly to Franklin County and the sheriff in Snohomish County about saying that their actions were reckless and illegal. I'm not sure if the governor spoke directly to Franklin County or not, but I just do know that they did have further conversations with legal review and ultimately rescinded.
Yeah, on last week's conversation with, in WASAC with all the county administrators, I believe Franklin County reported the AG's office was involved. And I don't know if they received a formal letter but the AG's office was involved as part of rescinding that ordinance.
I remember that now, you're right. And so with Representative Gilligan's letter, it might be two issues. And number one is, hey, Governor, recognize that each county is different. And I'm okay with that. We are different. He's going to take that approach, I'm told, and not one size fits all. But I think the other piece of it, and I don't want to read into it because I don't have that letter right in front of me. I didn't make a copy for me. I have the other letter. But the other approach is, and I don't want to misspeak, might be let the counties do it themselves. And so I'm not in favor of that because I don't want to jump into a legal challenge and I don't want to assume responsibility for people's health in this arena relative to a pandemic. If the governor has the ultimate authority and he's establishing the rules and what's going to take place, I'm okay with that under these guidelines. But I think the letter that Representative Gilligan is proposing asks the governor, consider decentralizing, consider the third option, not just one or two, but consider the third one. And I'm okay with him considering that, but I don't want to assume command and control of that issue at a local level. Seatmates?
Well, I just think that if you don't want that control, then you don't want him to consider that option. I'm not sure what the point is in saying consider an option that you don't want. I don't want it either, frankly, because I don't have the public health apparatus around me that the governor does. And the idea that I don't think there's any legal problem with the letter. I mean, it just, as Elizabeth said, it's asking the governor to take the right legal steps to appropriately decentralize it. So it's not a legal issue. It's an appropriate request. I just don't think it's not a request that I want granted, and it's not good policy. So I don't want to be signing the letter myself.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards, any final thoughts on that one?
Well, I'd just say there's no point in having a differing opinion and signing a letter, one commissioner or to do something or two commissioners to do something. If we're not with it all together, there's no point in sending that letter. As far as I can see, I'd have a little different view than my seatmates. I believe that we could actually follow most of the governor's guidelines that he's got laid out, but we could consider the uniqueness of what's taking place here in Thurston County and some of the differences on the way people live here in Thurston County and different areas of the county. But that being said, there's no point in trying to split hairs at this point in time. I defer to the democratic process.
Well, and I don't want decentralization. I don't want the command and control of this. For that, like you said, Ty, we don't have the surrounding wraparound help that we need at this local level. But if he's open to the consideration of expanding or relaxing certain guidelines per county based on population, based on deaths, based on the confirmed cases that we have, whatever. I'm okay with that, and he will consider that. It sounds like he's going to, so I'm okay with that. But that's the governor making those decisions, and not just a Thurston County commissioner. So I'm not in favor of signing the letter, and it doesn't have to go out with all of our signatures or none. It was very clear by the representative that if we didn't send a letter as a board, that an individual could send a letter of support to Representative Gilligan, just as an individual. And so that option is still open. But I'm not going to sign this letter. So let's talk about the letter regarding Clark County, Temple Lentz's council member Temple Lentz's letter of support that he wants us to sign off on, and that is thanking the governor and supporting the governor. And that's the letter we have here. And that he's basing his decisions on science and epidemiology and that type of stuff. It's a letter of support. And I hope you've had a chance to read it.
I can pipe in. So this happened kind of like that guy with the septic system where he kind of like sent individual emails with a personalized message, and it fooled me into thinking that it was a personal request. So I got this email and it said, "Hi Ty, I think we've met at different events and I have met him."
That's the same thing that.
I see he sent the same thing to John. Yeah. So I thought it was a personal request to me, and I just responded. I had Thomasina let him know that I would be comfortable being added to this. I'm happy if the board wants to do it, and if not, I could do it as an individual commissioner. I never think it's a bad idea to let, as we know, elected officials know that we are, appreciate the work and support what they're doing, which I do in this case with Governor Inslee's leadership. So I'm okay with this letter, and it doesn't, I apologize. If I'd known it was a board request, I wouldn't have acted. And I don't know if Thomasina has contacted him or not. I assume she has because I directed her to yesterday.
Well, so it's almost like a telemarketer.
Yeah.
And I find that offensive.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I don't remember you. We've probably met. Okay, I took it personal.
And I have met, so I did. So it made me believe 100% that it was a personalized email.
Yeah. Commissioner Edwards, your thoughts?
Well, some of the same thing. I do think the governor's got his hands full. I would even commend the governor on vetoing his own legislation, recognizing how serious this thing we're dealing with is. But then on the other hand, I'm not 100% with the governor either, because I think one size does not fit all. And, I think that we were all painted with that same brush, whether we're here on the west side or whether we're in Ponderay County. And so I think I'll just leave well enough alone and hear what the governor has to say tomorrow. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to see where we're at. We like to think we can influence things, but I'm not sure we're gonna have a big influence on anything, either one of these letters, to be honest with you. The governor is in charge. There's a mechanism in place to allow him to extend things. I saw both sides signing off on the legislative leadership letter. I'm willing to sacrifice and go along with those folks for now, hoping the governor will realize that we're all somewhat different, and maybe he can make those decisions at his level and not treat us all like we're in King County.
So with that, or on the tails of that, I agree. He has, when he's received further information from wherever he's receiving his information, and he's changed policy or altered course or relaxed rules and such, I think he obviously realizes one size does not fit all. And this letter is a supportive, positive, thank you for what you're doing. And I still believe that with some of the early interventions that he has taken, it has minimized, I think. We haven't seen what back east has seen. And Thurston County hasn't seen what King County has seen. So I'm in favor of supporting this. The only reason I'm bringing it to the board is I presumed he was looking for a board, because it came to the chair, looking for a board sign off. But if that's the case, I'm willing to contact him and tell him to add my name. And you've already done that, Ty?
Yeah, let's just do the two individual names, and then the board doesn't, then Gary's out, I think that covers it.
We'll do that. You all right with that, Gary?
Sure.
Okay, good. That puts that to rest. Good. The next is the Economic Recovery Task Force letter to the governor.
Yeah, Commissioners, I provided to you a copy of a proposed letter for your consideration. And this is addressed to Governor Inslee. And the gist of this is to, Governor Inslee is putting together so many working groups. Working groups as to how the recovery is gonna be taking place. And this letter is requesting the governor to have Thurston County be at the table to be part of the economic recovery strategy as we move forward. And this request is, this letter requests that Michael Kay, the Executive Director of the Thurston County Economic Development Council, be part of that working group, specifically dealing with the economic recovery and safe return to work strategies the governor is implementing. That's really in a gist, the letter. I know this, I'm just presenting this to you. More than happy to take the time and read it. I just like to introduce this concept. If you have the time to review that today, please do it. If you have any comments, I will be more than happy to implement those comments. But if you agree with the concept, we'll move forward on drafting a final letter.
Okay, thoughts?
Good.
That was a hand, Gary, not a thumb. You have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know, this might be a good opportunity to thank the governor for what he has done as an individual letter from us. It doesn't say in here anything in here about recognizing that he's dealt with some real tough situations, and I don't see why we just don't recognize that at this point in time, all in one letter. So we can tell him, because we aren't in the governor's shoes. We don't have all the information that the governor had to make some of these decisions. Whether we agree with it or not, he is the governor and made some tough calls. And I think that in itself is worth recognizing. Whether you agree or not, he had to make some tough calls here. One of the things that I think really showed dedication to this situation was him vetoing his own agenda legislation. I think that was a big issue. And I think it also shows that we've got problems coming down the pike here that I'm sure he had a little more insight in maybe than we do. But I see it as a twofer.
I see that's a great idea to add a letter or a couple lines in there, thanking him very much and recognizing his leadership in this.
Yep.
You okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll draft an introductory paragraph thanking the governor for his efforts.
A little bit of a preamble about what we're dealing with here and what he's been dealing with.
Okay, if you have any additional comments, please let me know. Thank you.
All right. Commissioners' assignments to external boards and commissions. And who would like to start? We probably haven't had a whole lot of them.
Not much of it, yeah. And this is just open for you to discuss whatever you'd like to discuss.
Okay. Go ahead, Ty.
I've got one. The Chehalis River Basin Flood Authority has in the past, it's tracking the Chehalis, what's called the Chehalis Basin Strategy, which is a two-pronged approach to try to get flood reduction and to get aquatic species restoration, they call it, fish, basically, flood and fish. And that was a compromise reached some years ago to work on both goals at the same time and see if they could get a mutually beneficial package. Well, the big piece of the package on the flood side is the flood retention facility or the dam above PL. And the EIS that was done came out quite recently, and it was an interesting EIS. I've talked to a number of people about it because I don't have a long history of looking at environmental impact studies, but everybody that I've talked to who does have that long history was very surprised by it because it identifies a number of very significant impacts, saying that we don't even know if some of these can be mitigated for. And then it doesn't and then it doesn't provide for the mitigation. It just says, well, here's a whole bunch of other plans that'll need to be developed. And so it kind of leaves a lot of unanswered questions, I guess, is the net result of it. So the Flood Authority, which is a group of mostly Grace Harbor and Lewis County jurisdictions, they're very supportive of the having the dam as part of the package. And they have proposed, back in 2016, there was called a programmatic EIS, which is a little different scope. And at that point, when that came out, the jurisdictions, not Thurston County, but the other jurisdictions passed resolutions supporting the dam proposal. Because there's a new EIS, there was a discussion about whether there should be another round of local jurisdiction resolutions of support. I got a draft one here. It's a little bit, it doesn't come right out and say that it supports the dam. It's more about the process, but because there's so many questions about the environmental impact of the dam that aren't answered by the EIS, and the Quinault tribe, who is one of the votes that's on the Chehalis Basin Board, just came out strongly against the proposal. And then our staff did an analysis and made the point that the draft, this is a quote from our staff's memo, the draft EIS seems to leave a lot of the potential mitigation options to be determined later as part of other projects that would also require review and approval. This makes it difficult to determine what mitigation will go to the direct and indirect impacts of the construction and ongoing operation of the flood retention structure. That's kind of in a nutshell, that's kind of where it's at. I mean, I don't think it's impossible. The argument on the flood side is that climate change is going to cause a lot of impact, and the dam's impact above and beyond climate change might not be as significant as it looks. If you could combine that with a bunch of habitat projects, you might be able to get a net positive, but the EIS doesn't say that, and it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. So all that's a preamble to say that my feeling is that we should just refrain from passing a supporting resolution at this time. Kind of like what Commissioner Edwards said yesterday about the airport thing, when we were talking about a letter of interest. The perception is sometimes the reality. He made the point that, we sign on to a letter of support that we're interested in exploring the idea, and people jump to the conclusion that we're backing the idea. And I have the same concern here. I don't think our constituents are going to be excited about us jumping on this with all the unanswered questions that our own staff back in 2015 submitted comments. Again, we still have the same kind of questions. I'm not comfortable until I see what the mitigation package looks like and what it's going to do to directly mitigate the different impacts that were identified in the EIS. So I would like to take non-action, but I felt that I needed to bring it to the board in case my seatmates felt strongly the other way and wanted to pass a supporting resolution.
Commissioner Edwards?
I'm going to defer to Commissioner Menser. He's there. I am kind of curious. I didn't hear you comment about what the Chehalis tribe thought, though.
The Chehalis tribe hasn't come out with any, Chehalis tribe hasn't taken a strong position. They've been part of the process. They've expressed concerns along the way, but the Quinaults are the ones that really, you didn't need to take a position in response to the EIS. The Quinaults just decided that this was the point where they'd heard enough. The Chehalis, I don't know where they're going to ultimately land, that they haven't taken an official position. I think everybody has been playing along saying, look, we've got these dual goals. We recognize that there's flood issues. We recognize there's fish issues. We're willing to see what comes out of this process. So the Chehalis are still in the process, as are the Quinaults, but there's some pretty, on April 16th, I think the Quinaults came out with a series of press releases that are strongly against. And I think a lot of the things they bring up are accurate. Just the EIS did not do a very good job. And back in 2015, when Thurston County made comments, we said, we really want to see a thorough examination of the non-dam alternatives for flood. These different floodplain restoration projects, the Quinaults at that point had a thing called a landscape. They had a particular program that and Thurston County weighed in and said, we want to see that extensively evaluated so we can compare side by side. And the EIS really doesn't do that. It focuses in on the dam and the impacts, doesn't really flesh out the mitigation, doesn't really flesh out the non-dam alternatives in terms of how it would impact the flood issues. One of the big issues in this whole thing is that the problem with this basin is that depending on the type of storm you have, the flooding can come from different places. So the dam does a really pretty good job of blocking flood from one particular type of storm, the very severe one we had in 2007. But there are other types of storm events that could sort of bypass the dam and create the same amount of I-5 devastation. And the dam wouldn't do a damn thing about it, so to speak.
Okay.
So it's a complex basin with different kinds of events that can create flood impacts. So it's difficult. I mean, everybody acknowledges that. So I'd like to stay engaged in the process, but maybe stay out of the resolution passing business just for now.
Well, I support what you advise us to do, Ty, because you're intimate with that topic.
I appreciate that. Okay, great. Well, I will just let the flood authority folks know that we're not going to take any action at this point, and if something changes, we get a mitigation plan, we can bring it back for consideration.
Okay.
That was it on that.
Did you have another one? Is that it?
I'll let you guys take a shot.
Gary, do you have any board activity to report on?
I guess the only one that I'll report on is the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. That meeting that was held, I believe it was last week, neither Commissioner Menser nor I could attend that meeting. And I had talked with Chris, who was also going to be late to the meeting, so I don't know exactly where he checked in, but apparently my message did get through to the group, and they were kind of upset with the position that I had taken on it, and I don't know what Commissioner Menser, what direction that he'd maybe given Chris or his assistant to bring up. But my concern was that kind of falling back onto the memo from the auditor's office that Darren Bennett had sent out. Just, we gotta put things on hold here, and one of the things he was talking about was the technology delay, if you will, about moving forward on some of the technology issues. But also what we're talking about here with putting a halt on the jail project until we see what's going on, and kind of most of the capital projects that we've got going, that I didn't feel comfortable with moving ahead on any commitment to capital outlay to address the problem. Not that some of their issues weren't very important, but I just didn't think maybe it was the right timing to make some of the decisions, especially those decisions that had to do with financial commitment by the county. So more to come on that, I'm sure. But just thought I'd point that out. That was a concern that, and really neither one of us had the ability to get there.
All right, Romero, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I did receive a phone call from Mark Daly. So the message was received. So that created a little bit of uncertainty as to where Thurston County lies on the preparation of the climate mitigation plan. My perspective to that is, and it's just offering you my perspective to you, finalizing the climate mitigation plan, which right now is scheduled to be done by July of this year, does not commit the county to any financial obligations. I believe the county and the Board of County Commissioners will have to make a decision after the plan is finalized. And then any type of implementation the board would like to take, yes, at that point you may need to consider any financial obligations that you may have. So finalizing the plan at this point, and I believe they're hoping to be done by July. And again, I want to clarify, does not obligate the county to any financial requirements, because that's another decision the board needs to take. What elements of that plan you would like to consider, and if so, how you plan to fund it. But that's down the road, after the plan is finalized. So my suggestion to you, and my recommendation is for you to consider to continue providing support until the plan is finalized. And just have a final document, and then it will be, I believe, a different set of discussions.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
You all right? Okay. And Ty, good.
So I will, just to make sure, I will call Mark Daly, saying, the county continues to support finalizing the climate mitigation plan. Okay.
Perfect. Did you have anything further, Gary?
No, I don't know if Ty wanted to, if he had any additional on that or not. I don't think the public knows that we don't talk about these issues unless we're in an official meeting like we are today. So I don't know what interaction Commissioner Menzer might have had or not.
No, I'm good with what Ramiro suggested. That's fine.
Well, the only external board that I sat on is the Economic Development Council, and last week, and Gene Angel did a wonderful presentation on labor force and what we're seeing on the ground. The industries that are at highest risk with this COVID-19, the economic impact in dollars, in wages and employment. And I asked Michael Cade to contact our staff, to see about setting up Gene to come in and do a 15-minute, 30-minute gig on this for the board. It was very insightful, good information to have from the folks that are directly impacted with businesses and trying to keep business going, and what they're doing with all their array of incentives and scholarships and grants, and what they're doing for women in business, small business and such, and the SBA. So we'll be setting that up, hopefully, to have Gene do a virtual for us. But that was very good. It was a good meeting. Well attended when you have a screen full of people, and very, very interactive. But that was about the only one, as I recall, I sat on. It's funny, you sit in so many of these doggone meetings and you try to remember which one stands out, which one they blend together. And there's so many other of our commissions or boards are being canceled anyway at this point until further notice. And tomorrow is the steady meeting, I believe, in the morning. The South Thurston Economic Development Initiative, I think, is tomorrow morning.
No,
No, it's the first.
No, you don't have that.
It's the first Friday that they're doing in South Thurston. It's a first Friday group for their business association down there. So I'll be sitting in on that. Report back anything. So that's all I have, commission and board wise. Commissioner Menzer, anything?
Not really on commissions and boards.
I'm moving on to any type of commissioner items.
Okay. I was just looking at the CDBG email, Ramiro, that you sent, or that you sent. And I like it. It's great. My only question is, could we send a modified version of this to the South County jurisdictions? It may be different because, they may not be, I don't know if we're planning to have them have a seat at the table, but just so they know what's going on about the process that the board agreed to. I was hoping that they would be notified of what we agreed to, and then kind of invited to give input, if to the extent they have ideas of projects that they might want us as their representative, because we usually represent the South County jurisdictions in these meetings. I'm not sure exactly. I just want to make sure that we're not excluding them from input.
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
I appreciate that.
I'm reading the email now.
How about if we just got a quick gist of the email from the county manager?
Yeah, would you please?
Yes, what I did send this morning, it was based on the discussion that you had on Tuesday as to how the additional CDBG money related to the COVID-19 emergency should be distributed. And I believe the direction from the board was to bring the money to have a regional conversation as to how we better utilize this additional funding to address some more of our regional needs. And that's really the gist of that email. And also, since we have a reoccurring meeting every Friday, I suggested perhaps tomorrow on the meeting to have a conversation as to how this regional group should be formed. And in that email, I suggested for all the jurisdictions to start thinking as to who will be representing in this group. And also in my email, I included the City of Olympia because I believe that was the intent of the board to include the major player. In that email also suggested that we were hopeful the City of Olympia will bring some of the additional CDBG money to the region.
And a few days ago, I emailed the mayors and told them, hey, think about this because we're going to be talking about this on Friday. And I'm getting positive responses. Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Olympia gets their own pool of resources.
Right.
From Commerce as well, right?
Right.
How much do they get?
They receive on this allocation, it's 230,000, I believe.
So total, we ended up with $1 million.
If the City of Olympia will bring that money as part of the regional conversation.
So you're asking the City of Olympia
To consider bringing that money.
to, consider bringing it if we're going to do something as a group.
Right.
Right?
Or even something not as a group, even if it's just knowing what they're doing might inform what we're doing. You know, if they're going to give money to senior services, then maybe we don't need to, you know, just to kind of coordinate what we're doing is the idea.
I think that I talked with some of the Lacey folks, and I think that was the fairness issue was the concern of getting this additional $750,000, you might say, and how we were gonna divide it up. And that's what sounds like the direction in your email, you're asking for input on that. Is that right?
Yeah, to have, a group discussion. May not be the same group they will meet tomorrow, because tomorrow is the mayors and the administrators. Perhaps maybe a combination of some of the group members and additional staff.
Well, okay.
I do believe that probably somebody, and as stated in that email, somebody from public health, whether it's Shelley or somebody else, needs to be part of that discussion, because we need to make sure that whatever decision this group makes, eventually this has to come to the board for final approval. What this group is intended to do is provide you some overall perspective as to how you should consider allocating those dollars. But your legislative authority to approve as to where the money goes doesn't go away. It's just to give you additional perspective as to how the specific programs or specific projects you may consider. But it is important to have somebody from public health, and I believe that was a suggestion by Commissioner Messer on Tuesday to make sure that we have that perspective, because there is a requirement that we need to make sure that we check with the health officer as to how this money should be allocated, because again, has to be related to the COVID-19 emergency response. I continue to state this. The activities under CDBG continue to be the same. Those are the same activities, eligible activities. The objective of this new money changes. And that is the key. The objective is different.
So to reiterate what we've been saying, this isn't to identify a specific project or 2 or 3 projects. It is to level the leverage fact, all the funding, and get commitment from each individual city, rather than each city saying, hey, we got this money, we're going to spend it here. we can do a coordinated or group effort or coordinated effort in, just as Ty said, if an organization is going to fund this individual organization or group or project, we can divert and put money over here. So we're still getting that widespread help out to the community where it's needed, rather than everybody going individually on their own. So we can fill some gaps and kind of work together in concert with each other. And that's, I think, they're coming with tomorrow for that discussion. Because even Olympia, they could say, no, we're not going to use any of that money for a group. We're just use it for what we want. But I don't expect that to happen. So it's bringing everybody together. Let's address the issue holistically.
My question, oh, go ahead, Ty.
I'll just say what I heard from the mayors is that public health is driving our county public health is driving the COVID-19 response. And if locally, and if there's a compelling case that, Dr. Yu or Shelley or Kurt or whoever can make that, here's what we think need to happen, that they will very likely support that. But, they just wanted to be at the table while that we kind of, decide that. So I think it's important because I remember at the initial conversation, Shelley piped in and said, hey, we're going to need, if we want to reopen our economy at the earliest possible time, we have to have these particular pieces of infrastructure in place. And I don't know if that relates to that, to the CDBG guidelines and eligible activities, but I want to make sure, as Ramiro said, I think it's legally required, and it's smart for us to have that perspective in the mix.
I guess just to follow up on that. So all the mayors or their designee have been notified that we're going to have this discussion tomorrow, sounds like. What about Rochester area? Do we have, is that going to be Commissioner Menzer, or do we have a designee that we're kind of coordinating with down in that group? Roof or someone?
Well, I think that will be you.
Yeah.
The Board of County Commissioners will serve and represent the interests of Rochester.
We're the mayor of Rochester.
Yeah, and in a way, that's how we have approached last year's CDBG money distribution, where we, the county, secure funding for 2 particular projects in the Rochester area. So it's really, it's you and whomever is representing this group from the Board of County Commissioners will have to probably play that role in representing the needs of the Rochester community.
Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ty. I hadn't seen that email just yet. Anything further on commissioner items? Do you have one, Gary?
Yes, I think. We have until noon, right?
We have till 11:30?
Oh, really?
We'll stay until noon, but if
Till noon? Okay.
I guess I think we need to start thinking about what we're going to do to enhance our, kickstart our economic engine here. What is it that we can realistically do to make what type of policy changes? Because we need to think about it sooner rather than later, because it's not gonna happen overnight, I agree with that. But we do need to work on that, and I can tell you, it bugs me that on the, the whole docket thing that we went through, we've got many groups or requests that were out there for long periods of time. I did a little research on that resort out at Cascade Resort, and I think they first applied back in 2006 for some adjustment so that they could do their thing, if you will. The whole area down at the Grand Mound Rochester area, in which we would need to expand possibly the urban growth area around Grand Mound, if you will, to accommodate for business growth. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with a situation down there, and this is just a reality. I'm not against the tribe doing things down there because they create a lot of jobs and things, but we don't end up with a tax base if the property gets purchased and put into trust. The Great Wolf Lodge is a good example of that. The new hotel, the new spirits and brewery operation down there. I think it behooves us to get off our duff and get some planning done down there that allows other business to move in and get going here. So that's a big issue for that particular area, and I'd like to see some push put there.
So what are you talking, I don't, what you're saying is philosophical, and I agree with that, but what are you proposing?
I'm
And
proposing
hang on, I don't know who's sitting on their duff, but are you talking about our economic development manager pushing or doing something, or what are you requesting?
Well, okay, I'll say sitting on our hands or something. I don't know how, we've got numerous proposals that have been made to the county, not just in that area, all through the county, but I'm specifically going to that area because they don't have a municipality to hurry this situation along, if you will. And if we go through the normal time frame where it's 4 and 5 years to get a project in place or an adjustment to an urban growth area, for an example, that does nothing to help us solve our financial problem here in Thurston County. So we need to expedite the process, whatever that means. I'm not a planner. We have planners on staff over there. I think we give them the direction to let's get it moving. But when we've got places that have been different ones around, it's not uncommon, 10 years, 7 years, 4 years, where we've just been waiting for something to happen. And I don't know what that is. It is so frustrating to the citizens that have made application, have laid out their hard-earned cash, and they've got nothing out of it, except now they're on the docket. Well, we need to get something going. That draught farm down there, I think, needs to be included in there so that one of these outfits that have put in that they want to make an adjustment to that area so they can think about bringing business in, very much like Commerce has designated a certain area down there. I guess it's close to the county line, but it could be that whole area is a depressed economy that maybe has money available to help us develop infrastructure to make that work. And I defer maybe the county manager to comment on that. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm gonna ask, is Josh Cummings, our CPED director, on the phone or on the Zoom?
No.
Okay.
We
Can you
just
answer
put,
any of these multitude of concerns or issues that are coming up, Romero?
So maybe you already approved continue the development of the Rochester sub-area plan. In the Rochester sub-area plan, also you already took action on the complete street ordinances. And that will start enhancing, the Rochester area. And the public participation on the Rochester sub-area plan has been extremely beneficial and has been extremely active. And in fact, a lot of the citizens' perspective on the Rochester sub-area plan are included on the draft plan that you might be considering approving here, hopefully when we go back to normalcy in a way. And also you heard about the status of the Grand Mount sub-area plan, which also has a lot of local residents, local citizens' input as to how they perceive that area should be developed. So certainly, what I'm hearing is, expediting that process. I will deliver that information to staff as to what staff can do to deliver those sub-area plans, so they come for your final consideration if that is the case. That's what I'm hearing.
And I know you won't, never mind. Thank you, okay.
what is that depressed designation by Commerce down there? Doesn't that give us some leeway to approach Commerce and for some help in doing some of this? We did something at the county line for somebody on the docket
Yes.
last time around, and it had to do with that designation of a depressed area.
Yeah, it is, the comments identified some, what, I cannot remember.
I can't remember the term myself.
Specific term.
Yeah.
But it really addresses, some areas that, low income and how the commerce can participate on that. And, you probably saw from, Jenica Machado, they provided a map of those areas across the region. And a very sliver area, in a very small area in the southwest corner of Thurston County that meets that criteria. But also fast forward, just last year, when we were able to bring some funding from CDBG money to the Rochester area, because again, commerce give us a perspective that now there is a lot of low-income individuals in the Rochester area that qualify that area to access those dollars. And the county was proactive in making sure we take advantage of that. And I believe we secure out of the CDBG money, I can't remember, it was overall close to $250,000 if that was the set aside for the two projects in the Rochester area. So addressing Commissioner Edwards, your question, yeah, there is opportunities. We're banking on those opportunities as we see as it comes along, and we certainly will continue to see any additional funding that brings money to the Rochester area. And really, I applaud the commissioners really to make this as a priority, because at least from my point of view, it was about time as to how we can bring the Rochester area as part of your decision-making process.
Go ahead, Ty.
Just a response to Commissioner Edwards' comments. I think that this year we did a good job on the docket process of not kicking citizen projects down the road. I feel like last year, 2019, and I didn't know, I was new and I didn't know what was going on and what was normal and how many projects, but I know a lot of them we just kind of deferred because we had the HCP, we had some big things, and we did kick a couple things down there. I feel like this year we really went through and said, this isn't going anywhere, let's remove it from the docket, or we put it on the docket and told staff, let's work on this. So I don't think we left a list behind of very much that, especially citizen-oriented things. We put Cascade on there, we put that Up Castle thing that is related to economic development in Grand Mound up there. We all agreed on that. We put the Barnett thing moved. I don't remember really any, I think we were a little tied up on the pet kennel and the Peace Lutheran, but I think one of those we moved forward and one of them we took off, if I'm remembering that correctly. So I think we kind of gave citizens the clarity that they deserve this year in how we handled those, is my sense.
I agree with that. I think we did move things along, but I think in continuing that, and you use Dr. Barnett's property down there next to Tenino for an example. He's been waiting 4 years to have something done. He's spent a lot of money, thousands of dollars. He's got nothing so far. I think that we do need to talk about how we're going to allow citizens to move forward with their proposals and follow the Growth Management Act in the process. The law allows for it. I was not even aware that we could actually allow them to go out and do all the legwork that in the past we've been telling citizens, well, we don't have enough staff to do this, and that's why your project hasn't moved on. Well, I don't want to use that excuse anymore. I want to figure out a way, and I guess it's referred to oftentimes as a third-party process, but where the applicant also comes forward with the process, he pays for the process, brings it through, gets it to a finished product, and presents it to the Board of County Commissioners, conducts all the hearings and everything, makes it all public record, does the job very much like growth management. Well, actually, these folks actually know the Growth Management Act probably better than we do, or better than staff does, and they are able to maneuver through it to get to the other end of the process. So I just don't want to be in a position anymore, and I'm just using Barnett as an example of, and that's not the worst example. We've got a bunch of other examples we could refer to, but in the talking process, how we get to allowing, and I think it's not an ordinance change, it's just a policy change on the board's part to say, yes, go ahead, follow the growth management regulation and bring back a finished product so we can make a decision.
Let me just real quick, Romero. I'm surprised you're not aware that until recently that a project can bring in their own staff or pay for staff, because we've talked about this for the last 3 years with Lakeside. They've been doing it for years on their project for recycled asphalt.
Well, that's, well,
And so I'm just surprised you didn't know that. And we have, we did a lot of work on this last docket process. I thought it went real well. I think it went better than we have in the past couple of years with moving folks along. And every one of these folks, not each one specifically, but there's been delays. It hasn't always been with the county. It hasn't been our lack of, where's your words, sitting on our duff or sitting on hands. It's been the applicant as well. And it's not about assigning blame, but there's reasons why things are taking so long. Some reasons aren't good at all. I would agree. And I'm okay with somebody if they can afford to bring the money with them to go ahead and do the project work on the project, but it's got to be well within the alley of what we need to have done in our county with our ordinances and compliances and such. And just the mere fact that someone comes in with a ton of money, to me, doesn't mean, okay, just go ahead and move and get it done and we'll push it along. Because then that leaves the little guy out. And I just don't want our county to be for sale. So we have to have guardrails on these types of things. But if they bring something and it's in their own resources and it's a viable project, it's the right one in the right place at the right time, I'm all for that. Yeah, bring it. Because we can't do it all. Romero, please.
So I did find the Department of Commerce, the terminology is opportunity zones. That's what they call it. And those are the low-income areas, and the Thurston County does include the Grand Mountain and Rochester areas. And those are considered low-income, and they label as opportunity zones. But let me maybe provide some feedback on Commissioner Edwards in terms of third party. As you approve the docket, staff is going to come back on an additional briefing where you start establishing priorities on all the docket items that you approved. And also within that priority conversation, it will give you an opportunity to discuss as to what opportunities the county has to bring somewhat of a third-party perspective and help to expedite some of those elements. But at the same time, I think it needs to strike a balance in terms of the fairness of the process, as well as the objectivity of the process, because I believe that is what you need to exercise your legislative authority, hearing both sides of any particular issue, and provide your vote, your legislative vote, after you hear both sides of every issue. And that is the striking a balance, I believe, in any legislative items that you will consider. And but certainly, I do believe there are some opportunities within the context of how we can expedite the docketing items, and that will be part of an upcoming discussion.
And I'm right with Gary Edwards when you talk with staff and tell them that we would like them to make this a priority, getting businesses up and running, helping individuals at home with their projects get stuff going. I don't think they're lollygagging, but just put across again the importance of these items, especially now, what we can do legally to help folks out and bring our economy going again. Gary, go ahead.
I guess I probably didn't phrase that quite right. Yes, I'm aware very much that we allow Lakeside to fund a position over here to work on their plan, if you will. But that's not the same. We were still, in my estimation, we've got our thumb on the scale when we just go out and hire somebody with their money. I believe we've got professional firms out there that know the Growth Management Act better than probably we or our staff do. And they're obligated to follow all the regulatory stuff that's laid out in growth management, all the hearings and public input, whatever else that it's gonna take place. And I think we should allow them to pick their person, not have us pick their person, but allow them to move forward with these projects until they get to the point they can come in front of the board to make a determination. It's just plain not fair that we take a gentleman like the doctor down there and take thousands of his dollars, and then 4 years later, when I ask about it to staff, well, where are we at on that? Well, we haven't done anything on that yet. That is so unacceptable, I can't emphasize that, how frustrating that is. So we need to change our philosophy on how we do business. And I think we expect the law to be followed, and these firms that do this as a profession are very qualified in doing those activities and the guidelines of the law and growth management specifically, because it is very complicated.
All right, Ty?
Question for Ramiro. Ramiro, when, is there a date set, or when do you expect there to be a date set for what you called the priority setting?
Yeah, I was looking at the calendar. I don't see it. I don't quite find it. But I will get back to you as to when that briefing is coming up. But that is the strategy that I discussed with Josh in terms of first step. You did, I believe, an excellent job in determining the items in the docket. Great discussion. You approved that. Now the next step is how you, the board, will like to establish those priorities within all those items. And along the way, and again, will be a discussion as to how a third party could be part of that delivery of those docketing items. So I'll get back to you on the specific date, Commissioner.
Probably sometime in May.
Sooner rather than later, yes, in May.
Thank you.
Thanks for your clarification, Gary, on that, because what you're saying, it makes sense. Yeah. All right, anything further?
I had an item I wanted
Go
to,
ahead.
so this is just an email I think we all got from NACO about urging representatives to join bipartisan effort to provide direct aid to counties. This is super important, and I was going to start doing something myself, and then I thought, well, you know, the board might, you guys might be working on it, or Robin or Ramiro might be working on it. I better cool my jets until we talk about it together, because I'm sure we're all, you know, of the same mind on this. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw that email. And
Yes, I did. I'm looking for it here.
it sounds
How about
like
if
what
the
they're
county
trying to do is-
manager encapsulates what we're dealing with here?
Can you help me understand what email you're talking about, Commissioner?
Yes, it's basically NACO is asking us to urge our basically
Yeah.
Denny Heck, I guess.
Yeah,
Our federal representatives to write this letter to Speaker Pelosi and Leader McCarthy about getting direct help and flexible, aid to county governments, of the kind that was stripped
Yep.
out of the last CARES package, but the president said he would include in the next CARES package. So we want to make sure that this happens. This could be just a massive importance to us, and so I just didn't know exactly how to respond, or in what way, or how strongly can the board do this?
yeah, thank you, Commissioner. You may recall, and you sent emails and made phone calls before the CARES Act, the second wave was approved here 2 weeks ago. NACO, I think we're hopeful it will include somewhat of a lifeline to local governments. Unfortunately, it didn't. So I believe NACO is in the process of engaging all the elected officials across the country to make sure that we contact our federal delegation. Go ahead, Robin.
This is a little different, and this request from NACO came in yesterday morning and I had forwarded on to you. They are asking, apparently, U.S. Representatives Spanberger, Katko, DeFazio, Davis, two Democrats and two Republicans are spearheading what they're calling a Dear Colleague letter. And they've asked the counties to have contact our congressional delegate and ask them to sign on
To sign on the letter, yeah.
That's right. And the deadline is close of business today.
So, thank you. That was what my lead point was, for you commissioners to contact our federal delegation and encourage them to sign this letter.
Right. This is new.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say is, I mean, if the three of us do it individually or whatever, I want to make sure that we do whatever we can today, because, and I'm sure Denny will be keyed into this, but never can hurt to have a little more pressure on this, because if we can get something like this into the next package of relief, it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And Robin is right, by the end of the business today, and there's a button on the email contacting your representative to get that done.
Yep.
And rather than take the time to wait for the board response,
Okay.
if you're so inclined, just do an individual response.
I will
And I will
encourage
be
for you
getting
to
resolved Monday.
start making phone calls for the rest of the day.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
That's right. And close of business in DC is 3 hours earlier than here.
Yeah.
So you have 15 minutes.
Run to the phones.
All right. Anything else, Commissioner Edwards?
Where are we at on solid waste? We've got all that fixed as far as people can bring stuff in on weekends. Can they go to Rochester?
Business as usual.
Business as usual
Yeah,
now,
so,
right?
yeah.
And where are we at on the flow control stuff? I'm just,
The flow control ordinance, staff is gonna be bringing that to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for some perspective before it comes to the board.
so that's gonna be when we get back to business
As
as
soon
normal.
as soon as we can organize a meeting, I will ask Jennifer if maybe a virtual meeting may be in place, something like that.
No, I don't know, I'm just wondering where it was
So
at.
that's the-
I got asked, so.
That's the step on the flow control.
You already told me, I think, on flow control that it was not construction related, it was curbside service. Yeah.
Curbside.
Okay.
My neighbor texted me at 6 o'clock this morning, asking if the dump was open this weekend. Yes, business as usual.
And it's already well cleared on the county's website. Perhaps what some of the citizens may be confused because right off the bat, it says all county facilities are closed. But they need to further get into it,
Yeah.
and the solid waste facilities are open.
So perhaps that needs to change.
It is there.
Okay. After it says all county operations are closed?
Well, because that's the message.
Yeah.
But, I will welcome any feedback as to how we can improve the message, commissioners.
No, my message is just don't confuse the public.
Well, but if you have the chance to look at the website, if you see the messages confusing, I will welcome the feedback.
Okay. Anything else, Robin? Gary, you got your hand up. You're looking at the clock.
Well, one more thing, I gotta keep going, we've got until noon,
Yep.
Sometime back, we had a pretty good dust up about the nitrate levels in groundwater and the fact that the criteria that the county uses is different than what the state uses and the federal folks use. So, my question is there a definite reason why we do things different here in Thurston County when we utilize different criteria to justify things? So I would like to put us in line with what the state and the federal folks do so that we're not kind of using erroneous interpretation of the condition of water just based on our own philosophy. Why aren't we using the state and the federal level? So I'm just wondering when we can have that conversation to see. I believe it's just a policy issue. I don't think it's an ordinance or anything. So I'm just looking for a little guidance on when we might be able to move forward on that particular topic.
My understanding is that from what the water folks explained is not that the county set some different minimum. We just have a lower level where we start to pay attention. It's kind of like a flag, an area of concern. We keep an eye on it at that point. We're not saying that the county level for violating health code is half of what the state is. It's just that when it gets to that lower level, we start to pay attention to it, and that doesn't seem inappropriate to me. So,
well,
I'm not sure.
I think, but the county actually did change some zoning issues and the criteria on what people could or couldn't do with their property based on those lower numbers than the state or federal numbers, and that's where I'm going with this. We adjusted our zoning to whether it was 1 in 5, 1 in 10, 1 in 20, I don't know what it was, but sometime back, we took a lot of property rights away from people based on erroneous information, and I just want to make sure that we're not in the business of doing that regularly. The information that came out the other day, I mean, that was news to me that we were out of compliance with the feds or the state. And I guess it's not really out of compliance, but the criteria that we were using, and we used that as justification to change the zoning. I'm looking at where we can have a discussion on that and see if we're doing things that are fair to all parties concerned. That's my concern as we move forward on that issue.
So what you're requesting is have staff come in and having a proposed code revision.
I don't know if it's in code or not.
It is in code.
Okay, if it's in code and the justification for what we did.
And well, that has been in place for years, and I don't know how the justification can be put in place, but certainly if the board provides me direction to bring staff as to how you can start having those conversations in a proposed code revision, I can certainly do that.
And I do think that ties in with the low impact development that we're working on as well, because that water quality issue came into play when they changed the impervious soil conditions from 70% to 10% in the fall of 16. So
I think this is unrelated. This level of nitrates that you're talking about, this has been in place for quite some time, before the low impact development came to place.
Oh, right, before that happened, but it was part of the justification for changing that impervious soil portion of it, and I think we're trying to address that now on properties above 2.5 acres. I think there's something in there that addresses that, but we're also telling people that, hey, you've got this long driveway, so you can't build a garage, that type of thing. I want to make sure, it's one of the big things I've been trying to get adjusted for 3 years now, is that impervious position, and somehow that came back to the nitrate level that we used as justification for moving forward with the more stricter interpretation of impervious conditions, where we went to the 10% from the 70%.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm recalling that nexus, but certainly, and again, if the board wants me to engage staff to bring some proposals to how you would like to change the code, that's a direction that you need to provide that to me.
Well, okay.
But at least from my point of view, the impervious surfaces was related to stormwater requirements as part of the low impact development related to the NPDES permit. the ecology issues to the county. So I personally don't remember the nitrates level be part of that nexus of that conversation that led to establishing the percentages previous or impervious surfaces. And this is just my history. I may be totally off on that, but and again, the low impact development is a requirement that came from the state as a result of giving us the expectations when they issue the NPDES permit to the county.
Go ahead, Ty.
I think the nexus of that point, it has been and continues to be our policies about septic, which we've never finished. And this is an area that I'm kind of aggravated about, because we've had this conversation just kind of rolling, and it takes 3 or 4 months. We run out of time to make any decision, and then it's 3 or 4 months before we see the topic come back up again. We had proposals, or we had options presented at the last briefing where this issue that Commissioner Edwards is talking about came up, where it was a question of, should we be looking at a pollution identification and control approach? That was kind of the compromise approach versus a more aggressive look at having universal rules in place. But that discussion was never completed, and I'd like to continue to have that discussion, and that would wrap directly into the issue Commissioner Edwards is talking about the state, federal, and local nitrate level limits or levels. So I think that we can tie those two together and have something, sooner rather than later to discuss all of that.
I think that's a good point. I agree with Commissioner Menzer on that. But what I'm specifically referring to, when we changed the zoning down in the Rochester area, it had to do with claiming the high nitrates levels were too high. And when we went from ag land in one particular development that I'm aware of, where the nitrate levels were higher when it was ag land, and then, the density was increased tremendously in that particular area, and come to find out the nitrate levels were much lower after that housing was put in place. So it's contradictory to the justification for changing the zoning. I just want to make sure we're playing with fair information when we move forward. That's my main concern.
I would benefit from that kind of a briefing as well, and timeline. And but from what I understand, the example you brought up, Gary, in my district off the Rich Road of the shared driveway, was one where I put in a house and I have a driveway, and I've had the county apply the standard for the impervious surface towards my road, and then a neighbor builds a house on his lot or her lot, and the same standard is applied, which is not equitable.
That's
and
right.
So, and I'm not sure that is relative to what we're talking about with the nitrates and such.
Yes, because
And
that's
if it is,
all.
I need to understand that.
It's all having to do with the impervious soil designation. The big area that had the biggest impact on the county on that, I believe, was not only the Rochester area, but over around Lake St. Clair and the Elm Highway area. That was a big portion of that. And again, driveways were really the impacting factor there. I'm familiar with the one you're talking about, where they were kind of double counting an impervious situation there that wasn't fair to either one of the landowners.
And I think that policy or application has been addressed now with Josh Cummings. I believe that piece of it's been taken care of.
Well, that particular one, but I don't think citizens ought to have to come in and have that fight every time they want to do something. And that's where looking at that low impact development and putting some fairness in there. I'm not advocating going back to 70%. I don't think we need that, but I mean, 30% makes sense, and it still protects the environment. I actually went out and did the experiment that they utilize on the impervious soil, where you take 2 buckets and you drill holes in them and you seal around the bottom with a well sealer, and you put it down, and then you pour X number of gallons in, and you wait a certain period of time and watch that dispersal take place. Boy, if that isn't smoke and mirrors and voodoo science when they came up with that one to justify a 10% impervious soil, I don't know what is. And so, when it comes to the public being treated fairly, I guess we're out of time. Got it? Okay, more to come. How's that?
Romero, would you please wrap this up for us?
Okay. So I will engage public health to begin the conversations on the septic options as well as the nitrates.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all very much, and thank you for joining in if you're on the outside looking in, and we'll see you next time.